8:46 a.m., present day. 4 feet away from its body, the head of the dead man faced Austin, its jaw agape, revealing broken teeth. An ear was missing, which by the looks of it had been sliced off at the same time as his head. But there was no sign of it anywhere. The 2 glassy eyes appeared to stare directly at him. Blood dripped from the walls and pooled onto the floor. He'd witnessed some terrible things on many battlefields during his military career, but this was the worst. Another wave of nausea swept over him as he surveyed the gruesome sight. Having just come out of an extremely long coma, he was still reeling. Continuing to scan the room, he leaned against the frame of the door, steadying himself. This was definitely not the work of any U.S. Special Ops team, or even the CIA. Cutting off the head of a target was overkill and added time to a mission. It just wasn't done. He knew how many terrorist groups whose preferred execution method was beheading their prisoners, and it was well documented that Saddam's government practiced it on dissenters of the regime. Am I still in Iraq? Whether in the Middle East or some other region, nothing about this seemed right. Feeling stronger and no longer lightheaded, he stared at the only person inside the space, the headless corpse. The man wasn't in uniform, not military. A blue tie hung around what was left of his neck. The severed spinal cord was visible from the gaping hole where dark blood oozed onto the white tile floor. The man was in an expensive-looking suit, black leather shoes, and a belt, and a diamond-studded gold Rolex. A businessman? What had been the killer's motive? Certainly not robbery. One of the corpse's hands held a Glock with a silencer. Assassin? Hitman? Spy? Mercenary? Tossing aside his makeshift weapon, the shard from the broken vase, Austin bent down and retrieved the gun. He liked the weight of the Glock. Holding it made him feel more like himself. Seeing casings on the floor, he checked the gun's magazine. It only held 15 of the available 17 rounds. The room looked to be the identical size as the one he just exited, though it appeared more utilitarian. No warm glow from soft lights in the ceiling here, only buzzing, harsh fluorescence. But just like the other room, cameras hung down in the corners. I've got to move fast. Someone will be coming. Along the wall to his right were cabinets, shelving, a refrigerator, and a desk with a computer and monitor that was the biggest one he'd ever seen. The wall straight ahead had a long counter with a sink. The left, where the head remained, had a set of wooden stairs, some hooks with one of them holding an overcoat and a large clock. 8:49, morning or evening. He couldn't be sure. There were no windows, just like in the other room. I must be underground. Trying to avoid the pools of dark blood, he carefully stepped over the corpse. He wasn't successful, as the bottom of his left foot landed in the sticky substance. He went to the computer, which looked so different from those he remembered. The monitor looked as big as his television back on base, though incredibly thin. Hoping to discover something about where he was, he hit the spacebar. The prompt for a password came on the screen. Damn. He flung open the cabinets, hoping to find something, anything he could use. They were filled with medical supplies, gauze, needles, tape, linens, alcohol, and cloths. He poured some alcohol on one of the cloths and wiped the sticky substance off his foot. The refrigerator held more bags of blood. I need clothes before I get out of this damn place. There were no scrubs in the cabinets or on the shelves, and though he wasn't sure what he would find above ground, he was certain he would stick out wearing a toga fashioned out of a sheet. Before someone returned, he wanted to be long gone. His only choice was the dead man's clothes. By the gashes in the coat and shirt, it was clear to him that the man had put up quite the fight. Had the victim wounded his attacker? He spotted a bullet hole in the wall by the stairs. What had happened to his killer? Opting to leave the bloody coat and shirt behind, he pulled the man's shoes off, all the time remaining alert. Touching the corpse's ankles, Austin knew the man hadn't been dead long. His flesh was cool but not stiff. He guessed little time had passed since the victim lost his head. He removed the corpse's pants. One bloody stain on the left pocket was the only sign of the murder. He glanced at the overcoat hanging by the stairs. That article would have to do, and would sufficiently cover the stain on the pants. Putting on the pants, Austin felt a billfold in one of the pockets. The currency it held was British pounds. He learned from the driver's license that the headless man's name was Walt Turner. He also realized the year he'd seen on the calendar in the other room hadn't been a trick, as Walt's license had been renewed January of the same year. I've lost so much time since the mission in Iraq. Walt's address was in London. Angelique was in London. She'd accepted the teaching job at King's College just last month. No, that's not right. This isn't 2003. That ancient wave of familiar guilt returned full force. He shook it off. No time for regrets. After he was long gone from this place, maybe. Angelique might have left England and returned to the U.S. by now. Whoever placed him down here knew about his sister. The photo proved that. Was she in danger? The only thing he had to go on was the return address on her letters. Flat 2B, 29 King Street, London, United Kingdom. Could it be the same after all these years? Deep down, he hoped she was back in the States, far away from the UK. Away, she would be safe. Close, he wasn't so sure. He put on the shoes, tying the laces extra tight since they were a size too big. He ran back into the room he'd just left, unwilling to leave the photo of his sister. He took it out of the frame and stuffed it in one of the pants pockets. With the Glock in his left hand, he ran to the stairs, grabbing the overcoat with his right. He slipped on the coat and tucked the gun into one of its pockets, bolting to the door above and whatever was waiting beyond. 8:46 a.m. Dr. Thomas Wilson's hands trembled as he brought his morning cup of Earl Grey to his lips. The tremor, a product of the disease he had learned to live with, was his ever-present companion for the past 15 years, Parkinson's. He no longer feared it, but his search for a cure would not end until his last breath. Still, he had much to be afraid of, given the recent unwanted notoriety that wretched letter had given him. My last breath might be sooner than later. He placed the cup on the table. Despite his shaking fingers, he loaded his pipe with fresh tobacco. Sitting in his overstuffed chair, enjoying his tea and pipe, gave him some solace in defiance of the darkness of the room. The morning sun remained hidden behind his thick drapes. Until recently, they would have been opened at this hour, allowing the beams of light into his residence. He always loved seeing his wooden bookshelves illuminated by the warm glow of dawn, the sparkling specks of dust floating in the air like tiny stars, but the drapes needed to remain closed because of what had transpired recently. When Wilson had initially received the post, he gave it little thought. He was familiar with receiving slanderous letters. Too many people thought him a crackpot. And when he had learned of the slayings of the young women the next day, he continued to believe the letter to be a hoax, though the news troubled him. Nancy Black, a Tory MP, had quite the influence in Parliament. Gail Simmons, an actress with flaming red hair, had starred in a dozen films very popular with young adults. The normally stiff upper-lipped Londoners were expressing their communal grief for the women very openly. Politeness, reserve, and restraint were being tossed aside for public tears and comforting hugs. The whole country had gone utterly mad, especially after the mysterious disappearance of the victims' bodies from the morgue. After the additional detail came out the next day that an officer had been so close to Simmons' home at the time of her murder, Wilson had realized the message he had received was genuine and contacted the authorities, immediately handing over the post. His phone rang, startling him. Damn reporters. He decided to let Gita Drazik, his domestic, answer it. 13 years his junior, the 57-year-old woman retained the curves and large breasts that he, to this day, never tired of admiring. She was of Polish descent, which he had verified by a sample of her saliva he had required of her several years ago, as he now did with everyone who worked for him. She was not just Polish, though, 8% Spanish. When he had informed her of the findings, she had tossed a dish to the floor in disgust, breaking it into 1,000 pieces. Whether coming from her Polish or Spanish ancestors, he loved her fire. With the receiver to her ear, Gita stood 3 steps to his left, with eyes full of worry. "A Mr. John Reeves for you, sir." "He is not a reporter, my dear," he said, hoping to alleviate her concern. "Mr. Reeves is the young man I interviewed over the phone the other day. Quite the resume and very ambitious. He seemed genuinely interested in my work." And since Mr. Reeves' surname had been the same as his long-departed mother's before she had married, Wilson had offered him a job. "Did he say what he wanted?"
"Says it is urgent he speak with you."
He motioned for her to hand him the receiver. "Hello, Mr. Reeves."
"Dr. Wilson, I just wanted to tell you that I can come in today and give you the saliva and blood sample you requested."
"You sound out of breath, young man. What are you doing?"
"I'm just very anxious. I'm about to have a quick breakfast and then was hoping to report to your lab. I really am excited about working with you."
"There is no rush, Mr. Reeves, as I mentioned to you before."
"You told me that I could not start working in the lab until I provided the samples."
"That is true, and the lab was closed the day I interviewed you."
"I want to get a start as soon as possible. Isn't your lab open today?"
"It is." He grinned. Reeves reminded him of a younger version of himself.
"How long is the turnaround for the samples?"
"Oh, the samples are just for my research. I don't need the results of the test before you begin. Would you like to start today?"
"Yes, sir, very much, sir."
"I will inform the lead tech to expect you."
"Thank you, Dr. Wilson. I really appreciate this. Thank you so much."
"Goodbye, Mr. Reeves." He hung up the phone and turned to Gita. "I wish I had 100 more like that one."
"He did sound eager."
"That will be all, Gita." She cleaned off the table next to him, as she did every morning.
"You're not having your second cup of tea, sir? Are you certain?"
What a question. Certainty of anything during these troubling days was not just unlikely, it was absolutely impossible. "Yes, my dear." He placed his left hand on the stack of newspapers she had brought in with his tea.
"Much to digest from the press this morning."
Gita shook her head, but left without another word, having already shared her dismay with him over the grisly mail and the events that had occurred the past few days since its arrival. After Gita's departure, he turned his attention to the task at hand. At the top of the stack was the Daily Mirror. The headline sent a chill up and down his spine. "Copycat serial killer rips through London. Scotland Yard baffled." The editors gave more gruesome details about the state of the young women's bodies and reminded their readers that the police were still trying to locate the 2 missing corpses. But thankfully, the Mirror had not republished the letter. "My letter, since the bloody thing made it to national media. I have not been given a moment's peace." Normally around noon, he left his home from the cafe in the boutique hotel down the street to read the Times in its entirety. This week, he had cast that practice aside out of necessity. He could not risk some reporter recognizing him and then accosting him with a flood of questions. The only pages he devoured, now sitting at his dining room table, were about the recent murders. Again, thankfully, the Times did not reprint his letter today. Unfortunately, he was not so lucky with The Guardian, the Daily Mail, or the Morning Star. Each, once again, gave space to every blood-curdling syllable in the correspondence, including his full name as the recipient. But the worst recounting came from the buggers at the Daily Telegraph. "Scotland Yard brings in Dr. Thomas Wilson for more questioning." What the author of the Telegraph's article had failed to mention was that Scotland Yard had exonerated him of any connection to the brutal slayings. That kind of dull fact did not sell papers. One of the many experts cited in the piece repeated what his peers had stated in some of the other publications. Whoever wrote Wilson's cryptic message did have some knowledge of 2 communications from 1888 that many, like myself, believe came from the original killer. The Saucy Jackie postcard was sent to Scotland Yard on... Wilson stopped reading. He already knew the consensus on his note from the killer, a blending of the postcard and the infamous Dear Boss letter. The experts had books to sell and speaking engagements to schedule. Since Britain was suffering from a horrific case of Ripper fever, it made the marketing task that much easier for the current authorities on the subject. He tossed the pile of papers to the floor and looked at his half-empty cup. He had no idea what he should do next. He had granted no interviews to any media outlet, but now he questioned his earlier resolve to stay out of the public frenzy. Left to their own devices, the press would come to their own conclusions. "If I give an interview, they will only twist my words," he said aloud once again, as he had done many times since his life had been turned upside down. But his resolve was crumbling. The offer by Andrea White to appear on the BBC to give his side of the story might be the only way to get through this quagmire. He valued his privacy above most things, but that seemed to be a luxury of the past. "I do not have a choice, do I?" He retrieved the card with Mrs. White's contact information that had been hand-delivered by a young man from the BBC. Using his mobile, he rang the woman. "Hello, Andrea White." "Miss White, this is Dr. Thomas Wilson. I would like to take you up on your offer to appear on your program." "Oh, Dr. Wilson, you can't imagine how thrilled I am to hear you say that. One moment, please." "Certainly." Miss White's voice became muffled. He had no doubt that she had placed her hand over the speaker. He took the few seconds of silence to puff on his pipe. "Are you still there, Doctor?" "I am." "Brilliant. I just talked to my producer, and they are going to reschedule my interviews for today straight away. Can you be at our studios at 1:30 this afternoon?" "I can." "We will have a list of questions for you to go over before we go on the air. I want to make sure our viewers get your side of the story, Dr. Wilson." "As do I, Miss White, as do I." She gave him a few more details about what to expect, and then they ended the call. Gita walked into the room. "Would you make sure my gray suit is clean? And could you pick out a shirt and tie that would look good on camera?" "All your suits are clean." Her eyes narrowed, and in an audacious tone she asked, "Are you having your picture taken?" He smiled. "You know me better than that, my dear." "I thought I did." She shook her head. "Cannot believe you agreed to do that interview on the BBC, but you fooled me." "When is it?" "I fooled myself too. This afternoon." "Did you forget about your appointment with Dr. Vickers?" "Damn." "You never speak like that. You're spreading yourself too thin. That is the problem." "Both appointments are so important. The mummy exhibit ends today. I cannot cancel with Dr. Vickers. I've been trying to get an appointment with her for weeks. And you know I have to do something to stop the bad press I've been getting. The interview with the woman at the BBC is my only option. The two are a little over an hour apart. With your help, I can accomplish both." "Then I will get your things ready, sir. I hope you know what you're doing." "As do I." She left the room. He relit his pipe, inhaling the rich, comforting smoke. Only Gita came to his private quarters, which were on the top floor of his 3-story building. The floor below housed the lab. He allowed less than a dozen research assistants there. The ground floor, which was just below the lab, contained Gita's flat, storage rooms for the lab, and an office. He had left his private quarters only once since the post's arrival, taking the building's lift to his beloved laboratory below to run some tests on the crude stationery. Unfortunately, he could not get a DNA sample off the paper. But in his bones he knew that the writer likely had the genetic markers he had been searching for his entire life. Under other circumstances, he would have been thrilled. The appetites of every reporter in the city for another serial killer slaying had not been satisfied, and with every tick of his grandfather clock he sensed another murder approaching. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the copy of the letter. The authorities had kept the original. How many times had he reread the bloody thing? Enough to have memorized it.
Glad to have a blade in me hand again after so long, old boss. Happy to operate on two last night. Had a laugh at the copper standing across the street from the ginger's throat I slit. Admire your work, Wilson. More to come, dear boss, more to come. Jack. A quote from one of the experts in the Telegraph's article continued to trouble him. Wilson is not a member of the media or law enforcement. The man is a geneticist with a mixed reputation. What work of Dr. Wilson does the killer admire? And more importantly, why would this copycat of Jack the Ripper contact Wilson? Why indeed? But deep down he suspected what the answer was, and that terrified him. Thanks for watching Morvicti Blood, Episode 3, Breakout. You've just stepped into something ancient, and it's only getting started. New episodes drop every Monday and Friday, but if you want more now, the full 8-part prequel, Morvicti Execution, is already live. Start there to witness the betrayal that set everything in motion. Want to read ahead and uncover secrets not yet shown on screen? The full novel, Morvicti Blood, is available now on Amazon. You'll find the link in the description if you dare. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. What do you think? What creeped you out? What do you think survives? For early access, bonus episodes, and forbidden lore, join our inner circle, Bloodbound, at patreon.com/Lee Swift. Until next time, keep your lights on, stay quiet, and whatever you do, don't answer the knock at your door.